If you like bananas, you are going to love this jam. Welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. And today I'm going to show you how to make something a little bit unusual, banana jam. Now that is not something you find in the supermarkets, or at least I never have. In fact, it's not even anything I've ever tasted before I sort of just made it on the fly. And it was so absolutely delicious, super easy to make, that I just wanted to get this recipe out for you guys so that you can make it up and enjoy some banana jam at home. So I'm gonna use the 6.5 quart Ninja Foodie, but this could be done in the Instant Pot, this could be done on the stove, it could be done at any size of the Ninja Foodie. So really any way you wanna make it, the instructions are gonna be exactly the same. We're gonna use the sear saute on high for this, so no pressure cooking, so any way you wanna make it is perfectly fine. All right, so the first thing I want to do is get the Ninja Foodie turned on, sear saute on high, and hit the start button. I have 4 bananas that are overripe. These are not bananas that I would necessarily want to eat. They are pretty dark. In fact, they could even go a little bit longer if you wanted them to. They could be as, dark as you would want for banana bread. But these are going to be good. No problems. But you don't want super ripe ones because you're not going to get that intense banana flavor if they're really ripe. So we're going to put 4 bananas in. All right, there we go. Now let me go ahead and put these over for the compost pile, and then we will get to adding the rest of our ingredients and making up our jam. All right, so I'm gonna add in 2 tablespoons of lemon juice. I used fresh squeezed, but you could use the kind in the bottle, that's perfectly fine. And 1/2 cup of water. Now my water's a little over measured here, so I'm gonna pour some out. So it's exactly 1/2 cup. You don't wanna add too much water in, because if you add too much water, then you have to boil it off and it just takes longer. So 1/2 cup, that's good. There we go. All right, so now the next thing we're gonna add in is some pectin. This is 1 tablespoon of powdered pectin. Now there's several different kinds of pectin. There's a powdered pectin, there's a liquid pectin, and there's actually a low sugar pectin. I'm using just a regular powdered pectin. If you wanted to use liquid pectin, because that's what you had on hand, you're gonna wanna check out my website for the recipe, and I will give you the instructions on doing that, because the way that you add the ingredients in is a little bit different. If you wanted to use less sugar or even a sugar substitute, look for a low sugar pectin and then follow those instructions for that. I haven't tried it that way, so I'm not sure exactly how it's gonna work out, but people make low sugar jams and stuff all the time, so I'm sure it'll be fine. All right, let's get all that out. All right, now I'm gonna mash up the bananas using my mix and masher, but you could use any kind of utensil. Just break them up and bring everything to a boil. So I'm trying to get as many of the lumps out as I can. I want my banana jam to be very smooth. I don't want any pieces of the fruit in there. If you wanted it to be a little bit chunkier, that would be more like a preserve, but you could certainly do that. There's no problem with that. But I want mine really smooth. So I'm just gonna keep going around and around here to get these little chunks broken up. If your bananas are really, really ripe, it's gonna go a lot faster for you because they're just softer and they break up easier. You could also blend it if you wanted to. If you wanted to avoid having to use, any kind of a utensil to mash them up, you could put them in the blender and blend them up with the lemon juice and the water. That would work great. But I just figured I can do it right in here and I don't need to dirty something else. Now, if you didn't have pectin and you wanted to try to make this banana jam without pectin, bananas do have pectin in them. So you may be just fine with them setting up. It just might be more like an apple butter type of consistency versus a jam. I want mine to be kind of on the firm side. So that's why I'm using the pectin, but it's not absolutely necessary. You could do this without the pectin, I'm sure. It just would be a little bit looser. And the riper your bananas, from what I've read, the riper your bananas, the less pectin they have. So if they're really, really, really dark, you may have trouble with it setting up, on the firmer side. But it would make a great banana butter, right? It would make a great butter too, which doesn't use butter, which is kind of the weirdest thing. But it's just a concentrated banana mixture. And the sugar, I think, would have it set up just fine. So you would be good to go. All right, that's looking really, really good. It's nice and smooth. So I'm gonna just let it come to a boil, and then we'll add in our sugar. And we wanna bring it back up to a boil that cannot be stirred down. That will be at about 220 degrees. And you can see as it starts to boil, it starts out with bigger bubbles, and then they will turn into smaller bubbles. And that's when I know it's ready to add in the sugar. It smells amazing. I mean, oh my gosh, absolutely amazing. Now see how when I stirred that, the boiling went away? That means it is not a boil that cannot be stirred down. So we're not quite ready to add in our sugar yet. All right, let's give it a stir. Now it's still boiling as I stir, but not a whole lot. So I'm gonna let it go just another minute longer. All right, you can see the bubbles are getting really small now, and it does not stir down as I stir. So it's really still boiling. So now let's go ahead and add in our sugar. This is 2 cups of regular white sugar. And that, of course, is going to cool down everything. And now we are gonna start to bring this back up to a boil. Melt all that sugar, and we will concentrate everything. And then once it comes up to temperature, we will pour it in our jars and put it in the refrigerator. And we are done. Let it set up for at least 4 hours or overnight. And then you can enjoy your banana jam. Oh my gosh, looks amazing. It smells so good. All right, so banana jam. The reason why I even made it the first time was because I was testing a recipe for dehydrated banana chips. And I went through all the different stages of the banana ripening to figure out which is the best stage for dehydrating the banana chips. Still haven't mastered that yet, so that's still in the testing phase, but I ended up with a lot of bananas in a stage that I really wouldn't necessarily eat or put in fruit salad or anything like that. They were just a little too overripe, so I made banana jam, and it turned out so amazing. It was like one of the best things I think I've ever tasted, really. It's just so, so good. And again, the riper the banana, the more intense the flavor. And I do have a few little one surprise ingredient that we're gonna add at the end that really takes this banana jam to the next level. It's delicious, but not necessary, so you don't have to use it. All right, so we're gonna let this come to a boil. I'm just gonna stir once just to make sure everything is incorporated, and it is, and the sugar's melting. Now I'm just gonna leave it alone and let it come to a boil. We want it to get up to about 220 degrees. You can either use a candy thermometer, an instant read thermometer, or you can go by the look of the bubbles. There's plenty of ways that you can tell if your jam is ready to go. You can also put a plate in the freezer and get it really nice and cold, and then spread some of the jam out on it. Let it sit for about a minute, and then put a spoon through the center. And if it stays separated, then you know your jam is gonna set up. If it starts to all come together, you need to boil longer. And the same thing's gonna happen. The bubbles here are gonna start out larger bubbles, and they're gonna get smaller and smaller as the temperature increases. So we are just at about like 210 well, 212 where it's boiling, and then some on the sides there that are not boiling are at about 209. So we have about maybe 5 to 10 minutes left to go. But watch it very carefully. This is not something you want to walk away from. You don't want to overboil, or you'll get a really thick jam that you can't spread very easily. Still delicious, so it's not a fail, because I've done it, but it's just not as spreadable on toast. So there are several uses for this banana jam, and you can get really creative. You can just spread it on toast. You could spread it on toast with peanut butter, and that would be delicious. You could make a sandwich out of it. That would be great. But another thing that you could do is make something like an Elvis burger. So you would make your burger, spread some peanut butter on it, and spread some of this banana jam. And oh my goodness, those are the best burgers. I love an Elvis burger. So delicious. All right, let's see what we got here. So we are still boiling as I'm stirring. So let's go ahead and take a temperature. So that's a sign that we are pretty close, if not there, to our 220 degrees. Yep, we're there. All right. That's reading 218 right there. But over here, it was reading 220. Now it's actually dropped a little bit, probably because I stirred it. All right, so we probably just have just another minute or so to go. I think you'd be fine if you stopped it right now, though, because you cannot stir down this boil. It is constantly boiling even as I stir. So I think you'd be absolutely fine. But since I have a thermometer, I like to take it to the 220. All right, so on the edges, we did not quite get up to 220, but we are definitely above 220 in the center. When I stir it, it does not stir down. It continues to boil. So I am confident that this is gonna set up just fine. I can also sort of tell by the thickness and the way it drips off of the mix and mash here. So I think we're good to go. So as soon as this stops boiling, I'm gonna add in the remaining ingredients, which is 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. You don't wanna add that in before you do the boiling, or you just boil off all the flavor. So we're gonna add that in, and we're also gonna add in 1/2 of a teaspoon of cardamom. Now this is totally optional, but it just gave this banana jam such a spectacular flavor. It is absolutely delicious, but again, totally optional. You could add in cinnamon instead if you wanted to. That would be good as well. All right, let's go ahead and add in our vanilla and our cardamom. Oh, it smells amazing. All right, now I'm just gonna clean this up here. We're gonna get it into our jars. I'm gonna put a little bit in a shallow plate to let it set up so that I can show you what it's gonna look like when it's done and give it a taste. All right, so let's go ahead and get these into our jars. I'm using 8-ounce little jelly jars, but you could also use the 4-ounce smaller ones if you wanted. No problem either way. And I'm gonna use a wide mouth funnel because it makes it super easy. And we're just going to ladle it in. One question I get asked a lot about jams and jellies is, can you double them? This recipe you can half. So if you have 2 bananas, you can just half all the ingredients and just make, 1 to 2 jars of it. Or the smaller jars. I think it's gonna make about 2.5 of these jars. But you don't wanna double it. So if you wanna make a double batch, you need to make them separately. So start off with, the 4 bananas, and then you could make a second batch with another 4 bananas. But you don't wanna try to double it. Just doesn't work out that well. Plus, we were having a lot of popping, and if you doubled the ingredients, you would have a ton of popping. It would be going everywhere. So it makes, I guess, 2 8-ounce jars and probably like 1 4-ounce jar. I could probably actually get this up all the way. If I really scraped everything, I could get it to where it was almost full, but I want it to set up pretty fast so that I can try it for you guys. So I'm gonna put just a little bit right in here and get that in the refrigerator, because obviously if it's not real deep, it's gonna cool and set pretty fast. All right, so I'm gonna get the rest of this out and put this in the refrigerator, and then in about 30 minutes, this should be set up just fine, and I will show you the consistency and give it a taste. All right, so literally I popped this in the freezer instead of the refrigerator just so that we could, keep things moving along and finish up the video. And it took no time at all, like maybe 10 minutes, if that, to set up. So now it's not real drippy. It would probably set up a little firmer the longer I left it, obviously in the freezer or in the refrigerator. So I will leave these jars in the refrigerator overnight, and then they'll set up just beautifully. But anyway, so yeah, this is still kind of a little bit on the runnier side, but it is a good spreading consistency just like it is, and I'm gonna taste it for you. On my little English muffins that I've been trying to get right, I mean, the bottoms look pretty good. They're okay. Let me just say, they're not ready to be released yet, but I am working on that. So let's put a little bit of the banana jam on here and give it a taste. Yummy. Oh my goodness. If you like bananas, you are going to love this jam.